Good morning, guys. For those of you who've been following this channel and my, at times, random nature of content, I'm Uche Njoku, and I am a public school principal. I spent a lot of time talking about things that pertain to that specifically, with occasions of me talking about the things I'm also passionate about: cameras and AI and technology in general. But this morning, I want to talk to you about how important it is to have a very strong assistant principal. For the past over 20 years now, honestly, if I sum up all my time in classrooms over the course of my life, it would be about 22 years. But consistently, 20 years, being in the classroom, being in a school building, being in a district in some capacity, serving school communities, children, families, and school stakeholders. And I'll tell you this, over the course of my career, one of the most important people, or even better yet, important roles in a school building has been that of an assistant principal. And you might say, wait a minute, I thought it was the teacher. The teachers are on the front line supporting children. Or you might think, wait a minute, isn't it the principal? But everything falls on the principal's shoulders. Because the principal is the person with which all things begin and end. But I'll tell you this, no, is this assistant principal? The assistant principal are those who serve in the role that is adjacent to, next to, some people might say under, but I don't believe it's under. But being right there, being there to do the work that needs to be done that allows the principal to be able to bear on their shoulder all the other things that are either distractions or are necessary for the functioning of the school. So, what am I saying in this video? So on two or three folds, I'm saying this. Number one, if you're an assistant principal, you need to start taking your job seriously, if you're not already doing so. I've always told all my assistant principals that we are a multi-head, multi-arm, multi-leg entity. The school does not function if myself and my assistant principals are not on the same page. I see my assistant principals as an extension of me and myself as an extension of them. Every decision that happens in the school, we have to be on the same page. There cannot be any discord. We cannot not be on the same page. And when that does happen, where I'm not in alignment with my assistant principal, things are just that much more difficult. Because what ends up happening is I have to spend so much time going over every inch of every task of every work that the assistant principal is doing to make sure there isn't any deviation, any what's the word? Divergent ways of thinking that diverges from what was agreed upon. And I'm not saying that I hold my assistant principals hostage. I do not do that. Contrary to popular belief, I should give my assistant principals a lot of reign, a lot of freeway, a lot of authority, because again, I believe as a principal, my job is to ensure that they're also being prepared for the seat of principalship. To be an assistant principal, you have to have very little ego. I served as assistant principal for 7 years under 3 4 principals. Yeah, from and actually from like 2009-10, I was an admin intern. I was essentially assistant principal. I was doing everything. I just didn't have the license yet. But I served fully in that role as an academic dean. And then a year later, I became the principal. I was officially, tapped, and I was made an assistant principal. So from 2009, 2010, all the way through till 2016, I served in that role. And in that time, I had one, two, three, four. Why do I feel like I have five? Four people, 4 principals that I served, and each of them were very different. Each of them were very unique in their own stylings. I had the tyrants, who were the micromanagers. You must do it this way, even though most of the time, as I did it their way, and they even saw that it wasn't working, they kind of like in silence allowed me to do what I need to do to get the job done. But I had those who were like complete hands off and said, "Listen, I'm here and to step in when I need to step in to support what you're doing. But I'm gonna let you rock on your own. I'm gonna let you learn and grow. I'm gonna let you figure things out. I'm gonna give you enough space. But however, if there's a sense of urgency, I will give you very clear directives, and you must follow it because we have very little time to get things done." And I appreciate those types of leaders. And I had the ones who just recognized that they didn't really know what they were doing, and they recognized that I had some semblance of a brain. I could figure things out. So they allowed me to kind of like do my thing. However, they were quick to jump in if they need to take credit for things, which I always give my leaders credit. No, I didn't give them credit. I didn't give them credit. It was their school. It was their leadership. I was in service of them in the community. So anything I did, I never took credit for. I was, served under the pleasure of my principal, whether I liked them or didn't like them, whether I agreed or didn't agree. So in those spaces, I learned a lot. In those spaces, I became who I am today. But the biggest thing was not allowing my ego step in and impact the work. But at the same time, as a principal, I had to decide what kind of leader I need to be to allow my assistant principals. I'm sorry. Some people might be hearing assistant principal and be like, is that different from a vice principal? Same difference. Different locales have different titles. So whether you're assistant principal or a vice principal, you might have heard me use the term academic dean. And academic dean is a title that I use for those on my team who are serving in that role, but I don't have the position. Because in my school, in New York City specifically, there's a cap on how many assistant principals you can have based on the size of your school. So my academic deans are fully licensed to be assistant principal. It's just that the system will not give them the role because of the population of the school. But their role is very important, and they serve in the same capacity. They just can't do teacher observations in New York City. Yeah, this is the principal role, and the way I developed them and supported them. But also, assistant principal role is the way I worked in the service of my principal. If you're thinking about that role, be very careful, because so many people look for the role not because of the work. They're looking for it as a job. And some of you might be like, what's the difference between the work and the job? The work is the actual day-to-day just like grind. Like, this is what I do. And this is what I do because this is what I believe. It's in the best interest of my leadership, as far as my leader, and in the school community, children, teachers, families, the whole shebang. But the job it's about the title. It's about the title. It's about all the accoutrements, all those little details that makes it so ideal. Having positional authority. I'm the assistant principal. Look at me in my tie and my red bottom shoes. You know, I make XYZ more money than you do as a teacher. I walk into the room and people get nervous because I am the assistant principal. Those who are looking for the job and the job title, I avoid like the plague. But what ends up happening is your ego is what's leading you. And don't get me wrong. At some point in time, early on, before I stepped into the role, actually, when I was still a dean, not even thinking about administration as a pathway for me, I got caught up in that space of, when I'm an assistant principal, this is what I'm going to do. I start to visualize myself in my suits and my bow tie and going to these meetings and telling my family and friends I am an assistant principal. But thank God that I was just built differently. Thank God that all my experiences made me just the kind of person where it was always about the work. It's always about the work. It was always about making sure that what I was doing was serving those that I worked for. So, the title, even though I had it, the job, even though I had it, was not the center of who I was. The center of who I was how people felt about what I did for them. Whether it was the students or kids, the students or teachers or their parents, their families, the community, that became what was important to me. In this video, this morning, I just want to share with you my thoughts around being an assistant principal and why it's important that that role is about the work and not just about getting a job that pays more or a job that, like for those of you who work 10 months out of the year, you're like, oh my God, I have 2 months off to do nothing. That's good for you. I'm just not built that way. I think maybe like maybe 1 or 2 years that I worked as an assistant principal because of the situation. I was a 10-month. I think it was like 2 years. Those summers I worked. I still worked. I didn't have the summer off. I still came into the building, still worked because that's what I do. I work, and I don't say that everyone should be like that, but however, it's important to understand that what makes you a great assistant principal and eventually a really good principal. But I don't know if you can be a great principal, but you could be a great assistant principal. I don't know if you could be a great principal, but the stakes are much higher there. But what makes you a great assistant principal is your work ethic. It's your why. It's your dogged belief that what you do is impacting the future of children and those around you. And if that's not what you're seeking to do, don't do it. Don't do it because you will be in undeniable conflict with your leadership, with your community, because they will see right through you. And they'll only see you as someone who's just about ego and title and position. Leadership is not title, it's action. It's what you do. And at the core of what you do, leadership is how you make people feel. If they believe in you, if they're seeking your guidance, if they're saying, listen, you are making me better, then you are becoming a great assistant principal. But if they're questioning, if they're avoiding like the plague, if they rather mess up than come to you for support and direction, something is wrong, and you probably should not be an assistant principal. All right, y'all. Uche Njoku, sneaker principal, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Be well.